Perfect. And we are the Hamilton College Communications and Media Career Communities team, and we're happy to be joining with the Spectator tonight and be hosting this event with our alums in journalism. So thank you guys for that, for helping us, kind of source you guys out as alums. But I think the best way to start is to just go through and have Alex, Frank, Bara. I'm saying your name right, correct? It's Bara. Thank you. Oh, sorry, you're muted. Okay.
Yes, it's Bara Vaida.
Perfect. But if we could just kind of go down the line maybe and have you guys introduce a little bit about yourselves to get things going, maybe one by one. Whoever wants to start.
Sure, I can go. Hi all, I'm Alex. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming to our chat. I am class of 2010. I was a oh, sorry, you don't have that anymore. Comparative literature major with a minor in geosciences. I currently work at the Wall Street Journal hosting the What's News podcast PM edition. And I have been in journalism for 12 years. I've been working as a professional journalist for 12 years. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to say, but that's the basics.
Thank you.
I can go next. Hi, I'm Frank. I'm class of 2011. I ran cross country and track when I was at Hamilton, and I was a government major. And then I work currently at NBC News. I'm a member of our digital documentaries team. And before that, I was at the Wall Street Journal with Alex. Been at the a professional journalist for a while now. Started back in the day at Al Jazeera, bounced around between print and TV, worked at McClatchy newspapers for a while, produced a show for Vox on Netflix, and then ended up at the Journal. So that's my rough trajectory.
And hi all, I'm Bara Vaida, and I'm based in Washington, D.C. I am a 1990 graduate, so I'm the old school journalist here in this group. And I wrote for The Spectator, and that is really where it all started. So for all of you who are doing that, is a great way to get started in journalism. I majored in history and I minored in French, and I got a job at the Trenton Times after college. I worked in a newspaper and then I went to Bloomberg News. So I specialized in business news. And then I came to Washington and I worked for Agence France Presse for a while. And then I went to National Journal, which was a public policy magazine that sadly no longer exists. And then I was at Kaiser Health News, and I've been specializing in healthcare policy for quite a while. And I am now a freelancer. I've been a freelancer since 2011. And I'm really glad to be here and share what I've learned with all of you.
Thank you so much, guys. I think we're going to get started with the first question, which is sort of based out the state of journalism in 2026, just right off the bat. So I was wondering if we could, if you could each share, since you graduated, what's the biggest shift you've seen in the journalism industry? And I know that looks different for all of you with different graduation years.
I mean, I can start with that because I've seen a lot of changes. When I graduated in 1990, I mean, newspapers were still a really important part of, and remained so, but was one of the main places where you got a lot of news. Print journalism was still really big. Lots of great magazines and so many great print publications at that point. Of course, broadcast was also extremely important, but there weren't as many channels. And certainly there was no internet, so there was none of that. And, nothing in terms of the importance of how you report a story and how you work on a story has changed. It's just the channels, all the channels have continued to evolve, over the past decades. And so, I've just continued to try and evolve with that, try and learn new technology to keep up with all that. But print remained sort of my favorite in sort of digital writing too, and magazines are kind of still my area. And so I just try and find different ways to work with that. And you all can really talk about how you have adapted to that in broadcast and documentary and podcasting.
So when I started as a journalist, actually my first internship when I was still in college was in 2008. And even by the time I joined the field, to make money and stuff, um, I think a lot of publications were still figuring out how to make money off the internet, which sounds kind of crazy because it wasn't really that long ago. But there was a lot of like experimentation. There was a lot of spaghetti being thrown against the wall. There was room for interesting stuff, and I think there still is. But since I've been in the field, I think some of those channels have sort of coalesced into more steady revenue streams for a lot of these major publications and smaller publications. And so figuring out what is going to be the moneymaker for a publication, what is going to be the place where they sort of like stretch and experiment, and where you fit in has been something that has constantly evolved since I started.
Uh, been a lot of changes since I started. I feel like a very durable one. And sorry, this is a pessimistic note to start on, but it's been a contracting industry since we started. Kind of worth noting at a careers talk, though. It's with the since I graduated, the industry has lost about almost a third of its jobs, about 8% of them in 2025. Um, it's so just I mean that's a bummer note to start on. I promise I don't have all bummer points to make, but tonight. But that's of all like there's been a lot of minute changes here and there, but that's a very durable one from graduation to today. That's unfortunately a continuing trend is that the industry is getting smaller.
Great, thank you. Since you mentioned that, Frank, what would you say would you say that journalism is more challenging or more exciting than when you first began, like due to that massive shift?
I mean, structurally challenging, but there's of course, that contraction makes things tough out there, right? There's less jobs to go around. There's really skilled journalists who don't get to be journalists anymore every now and then. But at the same time, there's lots of exciting things happening. Like I'm really excited about some of the other changes that are happening, and I'm excited about some of the things that I'm newly able to do and going to be able to do in a short amount of time. And I think that eventually we'll get into talking about AI and stuff, but there's uh, for the person who's savvy about and up on the technological changes and can use them to their advantages, lots of really cool things that can be done. Just to throw an example, so I'm not being too vague, places like NBC, there's just a wealth of stuff in the building, like archives of material, lots of everything that's ever been filmed and shot and published by NBC. The ability to make sense of large amounts of information is expanding and changing all the time in a way that's really exciting. And the way I've already gotten to do some cool projects around it, and hopefully going to be able to keep doing that. So that's something that excites me about the current moment in journalism.
Thank you, Frank. We appreciate that. We're definitely going to circle back to, I think, the AI question a little bit later, because we know that's something that is really applicable and everybody's interested in. But I think for our next question, another thing that is definitely interesting to us all as students is for kind of students like us hoping to break into this field at this point, maybe just looking back at your own experience, what do you feel made your first application or interview or kind of trying to enter into this field? What made you stand out in that sense?
I mean, I can tell you what happened at one of my first job interviews at the Trenton Times. I the editor had asked me what story I had reported on at the Spectator that I really enjoyed. And I said, well, I covered a dorm fire at Dunham. And then I told them with great excitement about all the things I learned about how the fire started and how much it cost and what effect it had on the students and like, why this happened and what the college was going to do to prevent it from happening again. And And he told me later that that was the reason why he hired me, because he said most people don't think fires are interesting at all. And he said, you showed that, that is it. Someone who really is kind of an innate journalist. So I really think it's curiosity. It's really showing you're curious. It's finding a topic area that you really, really dig and really going in on that and talking about it, I think is sort of a good way to get started and think about it. And then having a healthy sense of skepticism about kind of a lot of the things that are happening, perhaps in the area that you're interested in.
For me, I think so. I should say that I got a master's in science journalism at NYU, graduated in 2014. And so there was a big emphasis in my master's program about having internships, and I had a bunch of really cool ones. But then after that, I decided I wanted to be a freelancer, and I did a bunch of different things. I did a kind of role that I think mercifully no longer exists at Popular Science, which was like a permalancer. So I was like on contract, but I wrote a certain number of stories per day. It was not great, I think, for anyone involved. But I remember like some of those early interviews and those early conversations I had with prospective employers, before I really had a lot of clips, although I had some. I think showing that I was reading everything all the time. And like, of course, you can't, show, but like if someone references like what's going on in Iran, you should like probably vaguely know what they're talking about. And if you don't, sort of like knowing what questions to ask to like get yourself kind of up to speed quickly. And I can tell you from a failed internship interview at the New York Times when I was in grad school, that coming prepared with pitches is also pretty important early on. So that's just like sort of like Bara was saying, like showing that your brain is working in a journalistic way even before you have your foot in the door. It can go a long way.
Yeah, adding to what Alex said, I think that it certainly helped me get my first. I think it helped me get my first foot in the door in journalism that I applied to, and it was clear that I was a fan of the show that I was applying to. I think that when you're interviewing somewhere, showing that you're familiar with their output, that you have things to say about it, and even down to the person who's interviewing you, that's it shows journalistic skills if you look someone up in advance and knows what they do and in what they've worked on. Just a small thing and that I think goes a long way that shows that not just that you know about the world, but you know about the and have things to say about the place you would be joining.
Perfect. Thank you guys for all of those answers. It's very, kind of good to hear from where we're situated, maybe, looking to the future and really considering this strongly as a field to kind of hear the advice from those who are more, of course, experienced in that area. That goes without saying. But my next question for you guys kind of revolves more around, I guess, the bigger industry. And that question is, how do you personally how do you balance credibility and accuracy with the pressure, I guess, for kind of knowing that you're going to ultimately be seeking, maybe especially today, engagement and just wanting to get eyes on your work? How do you really kind of choose your stories based around that and know that I need to prioritize my accuracy here in my reporting, but also be seeking out things that I'm going to want people to get their eyes on and to be interesting? And I think that's kind of, where the question of clickbait comes in, especially with, I don't know, am I representing myself accurately in a title, kind of at the, or I should say, yeah, am I representing myself well in a title or not? But that was a really long-winded way to say that question, but I hope you kind of got the gist of it there.
I'm happy to take that one. I've got some thoughts on it. I actually think you're talking about competing incentives here. I actually think the industry is in a better place on this than it even was in the 2010s when particularly when Alex and I were coming up. There's some bad cycles in the industry. There were things were very were um, outlets were very much chasing the incentives of the platforms. And I think that then you had whole industry shifts. There was this great pivot to video where everyone wanted to make short form videos for Facebook because they were getting incredible engagement numbers. And then Facebook changed the algorithm and the rug pulled out. There's been and whole teams got laid off and it was wild. But so I think that most of that decade, there was a lot of sort of bad incentives that you were talking about, like being overly focused on traffic and doing pure traffic plays to subsidize more serious journalism. I think that there's been more of a shift in the right direction, which is more outlets at least have a subscriber-based revenue model rather than a traffic-based revenue model. Which of course it still matters a lot whether that your subscribers are reading what you put out and that people are engaging with it. But it's a slightly better incentive systems if you're trying to earn readers' trust and get them to subscribe and stay subscribed to your publication rather than just getting people to click on articles. So I actually think the changes in that front have actually been mostly headed in the right direction. It doesn't mean there's no problems with traffic chasing and those things still matter. But I think that the industry's in a better place than it was on that front, given the shift to a subscriber-based model.
I think the question had a lot of different pieces baked in there. And I think Frank's answer was really good. But I will say I generally don't think of like trying to maximize engagement and accuracy as competing factors, I guess. It's more like accuracy and speed. And sometimes that engagement is a factor there as well. But like if something happens, like you want to be first, but you also want to be right. And depending on the size of your outlet and so many other factors, you know, that balance could be calibrated. But one thing I will say about headlines, because I don't think there's a lot of like clarity about that, especially when it comes to clickbait, most writers and producers and hosts don't write their own headlines. It's often like a group project kind of. And so these clickbaity things are often not like, I've had stories in my past as like a words writer that came out and people were like, this headline is, I don't know about misleading, but like, something in that direction. It's like, you're wrong with this headline. It's like, I didn't write this headline. Thank you for the feedback. But I pass it on to the editors that picked it. So just a little clarity there.
And I don't have a lot to add because I don't do breaking news in the same way I used to do. So it's been a long time, and I don't write stories just for clicks or some, in the freelance industry that they're paid that way. I think Frank is right. There's less of that now. That used to be something where a lot of people I think Forbes used to do that for a while. But so I don't really have a whole lot to add beyond.
Yeah, thank you guys for those answers. As Frank mentioned, there's been a huge shift in sort of the multimedia storytelling in the industry as like a way to get more views. And it seems like the three of you are all pretty set on like a specific media. Alex with your podcast making and Frank with your documentaries. And so I was wondering if the three of you could share sort of the experiences that led you to that specific medium and like any like skills that you found were more important or you were better at that led you into where you are now.
Okay, I can start this one. So as I mentioned, I was a words writer for many years, and I don't consider that to be exclusive, right, from podcast work. Sometimes I do have written articles that come out in the Wall Street Journal in addition to podcast episodes and stuff. But when I was in grad school and I had exposure to, the medium was primarily writing, both like hard news, like, fast news and magazine style, like a little bit slower. I also had exposure to video and audio, and I found I really liked audio. I just felt drawn to it. I thought the sort of amount of time that you put into it to the output was the right balance for me. Sorry, video was too much work. So I remember like this was very early in the podcast boom, like maybe Radio Lab was popular, but like not a whole lot else. And I remember having a conversation with someone else in the field, like, hey, I would really like to do podcasts and also write. Can I do that? And she was like, no. And I was devastated. So I was like, okay, it's a lighter lift for me to go into writing, fewer sort of hard skills involved. Let me just do that. And I think, eventually I found my way to audio and I'm very happy I was able to. But I think like I really just drew on my experience as a reporter. Like they are fundamentally the same skill. It's just the output that you're doing is slightly different. And now the way I talk to sources and the things that I ask of them when I do an interview are a little bit different, but I'm still, writing questions and telling myself the same stuff that I told myself when I was a cub reporter. And that's all the same.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm similar to Alex in that I bounced around with Medium and experimented with it. I started in TV, did a stint at McClatchy newspapers, and did some print work for a while, freelanced for a bit, that came back to visuals. I think that I mean, I really love the visual medium, and I like making docs. I think it's a great medium for ambitious and broad scope projects, which I think is what attracts me most of all. I think that if in the perfect world, I would be totally platform agnostic and would pick the medium based on the story. Unfortunately, that doesn't work like that. Like there's defined roles and jobs that in newsrooms that need to be done. But yeah, I think that in my particular industry, which is currently at a broadcast network like NBC. I'd say that there's a mixture of people here who are attracted to the medium first, that they like working in visuals, they like to film, they like to set up interviews and things like that. And there's a mixture of people that I would count myself more among, which are kind of uh, journalists first who fell backwards into the medium. I think it's fine to be either. And, there's also like people who love the medium also doesn't mean that they're not good journalists and vice versa. People learn, find their way to cross over in the middle and have the combined skill set. But it's an interesting mix of people who I think that the visual outlets and visual teams contain both of those people, if that makes sense. Both those types of person.
Yeah, I think it's a little like what both Alex and Frank said in terms of what is it that you're really interested in? Do you like visual storytelling? Do you more like audio storytelling? So I like long form. Like I'm a New Yorker reader. I like really long stories. I like, things that put topics into context. Like that was always, I was a history major. So I just, kind of continue with that's what I like to do. Put pieces of things together and explain it and put it in a way to help us understand what's happening with a particular topic or issue or policy issue. And so that's why I stuck with print because it was really what I liked and what I naturally like to do. And um, writing those longer pieces are what really were satisfying for me. But I think it's great to get really that experience of doing audio and visual. And obviously I also was one of the first people in my publication when I was at National Journal to create a blog on a particular topic. So, I mean, that now seems like a long time ago, but so I just kept trying to find ways to put things out in a way that, you could read it and put things in context because that's just my brain. But experimenting with all these different ways is really great to kind of figure out what it is that works for you.
If I could add one more thing, it just like a big value of internships and early career stuff is that it's fine to jump around between mediums and experiment because like the tasks vary a lot. And I think a lot of learning what you like and don't, learning what medium or what lane in journalism is for you is can only really be made sense of by getting in there and learning what tasks of journalism you actually like. People like all journalists like very different things about the field, right? There's people who love to write. There's some for whom writing is torture, and the part they love is talking to people on the phone and getting them to trust them and tell them stuff. I kind of visuals really appeals to me. So I really like the puzzle of synthesizing information into something you have to look at and get to look at. It's there's some people that just live for research and that's what they love. So it's like the best way to pick a lane is to think about it in terms of tasks. What would I like to do, and what lane within journalism gives me the opportunity to do those things that I like to do.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you guys. It's nice to hear because, of course, we're probably all at a very, I don't want to say experimental point in figuring out things career-wise, but it's, very nice to hear from people who have kind of, I guess, figured it out already or kind of found that animating factor for them within their own careers. But I think at this point, we want to kind of pivot to that looming question of AI in the newsroom and in this industry. So it's kind of I no doubt you guys all have a lot to kind of say on the topic, but I guess to kind of pose it as a question, what are the different ways that you are seeing AI maybe be integrated into your workplace or in other workplaces in the field that you've seen? And maybe if you could touch a little bit about if you have maybe ethical concerns with that, which no doubt you guys all do as journalists, but whoever would like to kind of take the lead on that, feel free.
Frankie, start.
Sure. Like I mentioned before, there's some things about it that in ways that I've gotten to use it so far, and that really excite me, and have been really cool. That doesn't mean to say that it's all rosy. I think that something that throughout my career I've been a dilettante coder, right? I've tried to code a little bit and never really gotten good at it. I think that's a particular exciting thing about it, is like it really puts that power in anyone's hands. And also that's something you can trust more too, is like, an AI research product, if you tell it to look stuff up for you, it often hallucinates and can be wrong. Code is either works or it doesn't, right? It's a little safer on that front. So like if you're not using it to if you're not using AI to give you information, but to code the thing that will get the information you want, it's a little step removed, and it's something you can trust in a little bit more. And also, I mentioned that just like the ability to work with amounts of information that no human could possibly do is pretty exciting too. Like, to give you an example of what I'm talking about there, my team worked on a big doc about our NBC's journalists in Gaza, who had for 2 years of the conflict had been posting in our Slack channel daily updates of what they'd filmed and descriptions of what they filmed. It was, and most of which had, a lot of which had never, some of which had been, put into news packages, but not all of it. So it was just so much stuff, and more than any one person could go through. We got our Slack administrator to export the entire content of that channel. I cleaned it up as data, and then uh, got to run with an internal tool we made, got to run in, queries on it so we could have it ask it like, well, who are the reoccurring characters in this footage? Can you find me some examples of this? And so we suddenly had the ability to make sense of, the entire body of these guys' work that we were making a documentary about. It was pretty cool, something we wouldn't have been able to do a couple years ago. That said, there's a lot of where I'm most concerned is like general value of labor stuff. I think Alex will have to say more about this as a podcast host, because that there's be very easy for outlets to make a bot Alex who could who speaks with her voice and with none of her panache, of course, but the but her voice, so there's lots of things like that to be wary of, and like there's things like when Alex and I worked together at the Journal, that's something that our union put up a plank about, saying like, they couldn't make a bot Alex. That's something that so there's some things like that journalists have to watch out for. Those more immediate threats to jobs and livelihoods and things like that.
So I will say that it's an interesting time to be at an organization that's as old as the Wall Street Journal, just to think about how they're contending with such a big technological shift. And no, I would say that broadly, the thinking among my colleagues, and I don't know if this is like an official line, I don't know, but it's how can we use AI in a way that's additive, and sort of like the way that Frank was talking about, and not in a way that's like taking somebody's job. I'm sure there's a certain amount of like people turning to ChatGPT or whatever to do some preliminary research, whereas that might have taken longer, if you're just Googling. But when we're talking about like the kinds of tasks that go into our daily work, a lot of that actually can't really be outsourced to AI. So I think, like, of course, the looming question is like, is AI going to take our jobs? Everybody's asking this question. And I'm sure in like many different fields, the answer is probably like some. But personally, despite the like Alex bot that could most certainly exist, I actually feel quite a bit of job security. And that's because I the thing that I do every single day, because like I work on a daily news podcast, and I'm doing a lot of synthesizing, which like in theory is something AI could do very well. I'm taking a lot of Wall Street Journal stories, I'm looking at them, and I'm figuring out like what deserves more space and what needs less space and what doesn't need mention at all for a 10-minute podcast. And the thing that like makes the podcast enjoyable to listen to is the conversations I have with my colleagues. And that, if you had AI do it, would be super boring. So I'm not worried for my personal current role, existentially, broadly, a little bit, as we all should be.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. As a freelancer, certainly it is hugely disrupting the need for maybe some more basic kind of freelance stuff. Things where like maybe covering some particular event, um, they'll just have some, AI just take somebody else's coverage or something like that rather than hiring somebody to do it. I am using it as a productivity tool. I've been playing around with it. And I like to use Claude. That's one that's become my favorite. And I use it to help me as like a copy edit tool. I will put something in and say, check this to make sure it matches AP style. And the important part about it is to say, how did you do that? Show me how you copy edited this piece. So it's, there's so many natural ways in terms of it's the way you ask a question that makes it a useful tool. Sometimes I use it to help me brainstorm ideas of how to ask a question. Um, sometimes to find resources in something, but you always have to be aware that it will make mistakes, that it will make stuff up. You have to tell it not to make stuff up. And even when you tell it not to, it will sometimes. So, I mean, there are scary parts about that. Like what maybe is it doing to photos? What is it doing to audio? Just, is it changing what people understand in terms of what our sense of reality is? So existentially, yes. But I'm trying to take a like, how can I use it, like you say, as an additive to help me with my work in ways that it can help me with data analysis, that kind of stuff. And so I know a lot of my colleagues are like, I hate that lying machine. It is, you cannot trust it. And anything we're doing to working with it is like making it worse for all of us. But I feel like it's here. And the best thing to do is adapt and work with it.
One more small thing is that, like, building off of what Alex said about, that what her listeners like, right? We're some of it's not all cost savings, and that they're, outlets are somewhat beholden to what their subscribers like and expect, right? And for now, an encouraging thing is that readers don't really like the AI generated stuff. They don't trust it as much. They, and AI generated voice summaries of articles or daily update podcasts that are where it's an AI generated voice delivering it. It's not as fun to listen to as a conversation. So it's an encouraging aspect is that they can't, it's not all just dollars and cents. It's what subscribers like and trust and expect. And they right now they still expect humans to make the stuff that they're consuming.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's all covered a lot of really interesting things. And Kat and I only covered, I think, just the surface of what we wanted to talk to you guys about, but I do want to give the room an opportunity to ask you guys any specific questions. So if anyone in here wants to raise their hand, and yeah, we can start.
Thank you so much for being here. I was also curious. As a freshman, one of the main paths I am thinking about is journalism. I feel like I have many options and I feel like almost torn apart because I have to choose one, I guess. I feel like I was just wanting to know, like, how did you choose journalism and were you between two and how did you navigate that if so, between different career paths and stuff?
Did you guys hear that all right?
I mean, I can speak as someone who didn't know in college that I wanted to be a journalist. I didn't work for the Spectator. It wasn't my first job out of college. I kind of went to DC, worked at a think tank, and then kind of afterwards meeting journalists down there and becoming friends with them and deciding to make a break at it. I think that of course it's good to have plans, but things also are happenstance, and sometimes you get inspired and decide to go for things. I think that it's okay to chase that inspiration if journalism, calls to you. It's a it's a tough field, but one you should go for if you feel strongly about. It's the and one that you're only going to make it in if you feel strongly about, I think. But yeah, I think that I know that like follow your heart isn't the best career advice, but I mean it though.
I was also not sure about journalism. I did work with the Spectator and I worked with the radio station. I was the sports director at the radio station, which I'm pretty sure is a position that no longer exists. It didn't really exist when I was there either. But after graduating, granted, this was 2010, it was 2 years after the financial crisis, things were not looking great. And so I did like a teaching thing for a year to see if I liked that. I was kind of bored. Um, I then worked for like a travel company. I thought about going into the nonprofit world. I was considering taking a job in Guatemala, weirdly. And then I didn't. I just sort of started working for the local paper in the town where I was living a couple years after graduating. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this. And I reached out to a woman who wrote science books who I really admired. And she gave me excellent advice, which was to get a master's in something concrete, like not journalism, like chemistry. And I decided that I would be totally miserable if I did that. And so I completely ignored her advice and got a master's in journalism anyway. And, I'm doing okay. So I understand why she gave me that advice. But I think those couple of years that I was, you can call them wandering in the wilderness, whatever you want, trying other things, actually really enriched me as a journalist. And I could tell the difference when I went to get my master's versus, me a couple years out from graduating versus someone who had just come from undergrad. And they were like, I definitely want to do this. I feel like I had more perspective and more depth of understanding of certain things. So this is all a long-winded way of echoing what Frank said. And like, you can try other stuff. I don't think that there's like one decision that you ever make that is immutable. And even people who did their master's program with me have done other things. Not all of them stayed in journalism. It's learning how to write, as Hamilton tells you over and over again, is a critical skill, no matter what industry you're in. So there's no wrong choice.
I think I was lucky in that in my senior year, I just decided I wanted to try journalism. So I tried out for the Spectator and just started writing for them. And I had a ball. Like I just thought it was so fun. And there was nothing else that I thought was as fun as that. So I just was like, I got to talk to people and explore things and then write about it. I was like, how cool is that? And so I pursued just a lot of different avenues. I actually thought about being in the publishing industry as well. And just lucked out that there was an internship in my home paper and I just started to write for it. So I think the biggest piece of advice is like find that thing that you really enjoy. Is it science? Is it public policy? Is it health? Is it climate change? Is it art or music? And if you really like to write about it and ask questions and think about how you can put things into context and, I think just keep trying it, just see if you like it. I think just do it. Try a couple different things and see what you think, see how it feels.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question to that. Thanks for taking the time. My name is Greg. I'm a co-editor for the Spec. Glad to see we had some former writers and editors on the panel, so I appreciate your work. My question might be a little more cynical than Evan's, but as someone who's thinking about going into the field, but is kind of held back by the financial constraints, I want to hear about your experiences just dealing with financial uncertainty in a market and in an industry that has gotten smaller over the years and that like Frankie was saying, is on a path of decline. So does money matter when you're following what you want to do? Might be a kind of cut and dry question, but it's something that's been in the back of my head, and I'm looking for an answer now. I'm hoping you guys can enlighten the path for me. Appreciate it.
I think that speaking, again, Alex and I graduated around the same time, and we were both kind of great
I think
recession.
we lost your audio there, Frank.
Sorry, what?
We can't hear you, but you're not muted, so we might be having a little bit of technical difficulty.
How about now? No?
Anybody else?
Can you hear me?
No, we can't hear anyone.
Oh,
Didn't like my question.
Sorry, we're just having some technical difficulties hearing all of you, so we're just trying to figure it out.